Thank you. So, welcome everyone to today's section. So we'll be looking at Microsoft's Power BI. Before now, we've gone through Excel and SQL. So we'll delve into Microsoft Power BI. And today we'll just do more of an introduction to the tool and what the tool is, how it works, why you should learn how to use it, and how to install it. So let's get down to brass tacks. So getting started with Microsoft Power BI. So first things first, what is Power BI? So Power BI is a cloud-based reporting and analytics platform. It connects users to a broad range of data through interactive reports, dashboards, and compelling visualizations. So some key things to note here, right? It's cloud-based, meaning that it works on the web, right? So you have reports that are hosted on the web. It has several components, right? You have a desktop that you install on your laptop. Then you have the Power BI service that works on the cloud. So as we go on with the section, we'll understand how all those components work together. So with Power BI, you can build interactive dashboards. So as against static dashboards that we are used to before now, you build reports and dashboards that you can click, drill through, drill down, filter on it, and you see changes based on what you select. So Power BI Desktop, on the other hand, is a component of Power BI. And the desktop is a free application that you install on your local computer. So Power BI, right, it has several components, and the Power BI Desktop is one of those components. So Power BI Desktop is the application you install on your local computer. And with Power BI Desktop, you can connect to different data sources and then carry out your data cleaning and start creating your reports and analysis. With the desktop, you can connect to several data sources like websites, databases, Excel files, CSV, PDFs, etc. And then with the data, you now create a data model and then use this model to design your reports. So the next component of Power BI is the Power BI service. So as the BI developer, right, you have Power BI Desktop, you've made your reports. How do you share reports with stakeholders in your organization, right? That's where Power BI service comes in. So Power BI service is cloud-based, right? And with Power BI service, you can collaborate with other teammates and also share your reports and dashboards with stakeholders in your organization. So Power BI service is cloud-based. And with Power BI service, you can also do some reports and dashboards development, right? But it's limited compared to Power BI Desktop. So it's advised to build your reports on Power BI Desktop. And then once you're done building your reports, you then publish it to the Power BI service where other stakeholders or your colleagues can access it and consume the reports you've created. So it supports live report editing, and collaboration for teams and organizations. So for this slide, right, we have established three things: Power BI, right, which is the whole tool, right? And then you have components of the tool. Power BI Desktop is an application you install on your local device. And then once you're done building your report with Power BI Desktop, you then publish your finished reports or dashboard to the Power BI service, where others can now consume and access the reports you've created. So on to the next slide, right? This is a pictorial representation of the previous slide. So here you have three components of Power BI, right? The first image here, right, the top left is Power BI Desktop, which is the application that you install on your local device. And then you have Power BI Service, which is cloud-based, right? So it's a web application, it's cloud-based. And you also have a mobile app that you can install, whether you're on Android or iOS, right? You can install Power BI also on your local device. So let me paint a picture how all those components can interact together, right? So I joined an organization as a BI developer or data analyst or whatever role I have, right? And I work with Power BI. So I'm tasked with building reports and creating dashboards, right, for different units and organizations in the company. So with Power BI Desktop, right, as a BI developer, this is where I'll bring in my data, clean it up, analyze, and create my reports, right? So it's like where I do the main data analysis, Power BI Desktop. I bring in my data, clean it up, and create my reports. So once I'm done creating my reports, right? So let's say I'm making a report for the sales team, right? So on Power BI service, right? I can now go to Power BI service. I'll create what's called a workspace. So a workspace is just like a container where you can put in reports, and then you give access to specific people to access those reports. So I go into Power BI service, I can create a little workspace, and I add the sales team members, right, to that workspace. I then publish my final reports to that workspace, right, on Power BI service. And now the sales members, right, the sales team members, they can now go to that workspace and access the reports I've created. So they can use that to make informed decisions about their team, right? And then you also have the Power BI mobile app. So you find out that it's very possible that, let's say the sales team, you have sales team agents that are always on the road, right? So they're not always their laptop, maybe they have their phones, and they need to see maybe hourly or daily metrics, right, on their phone on the go. They're always on the road. They're trying to make decisions as they go on the road and stuff, and they can't carry their laptop everywhere, right? So Power BI also provides a mobile app. So instead of having Power BI service, right, working on your laptop, you can install the app, right? So the sales agents can install the app on their phones, and they can also access the reports that I put on the service, right, via their phones with the Power BI app. So that's how all those components can work together. Power BI Desktop is where I, the developer, create the reports. Power BI service is where I publish the reports and others can consume the reports. And the mobile app, right, it provides an easier, convenient way to also access the reports that are created. So these are all components of Power BI, the desktop, the service, and then Power BI mobile app. So for this course, right, at this stage, we will work mostly with Power BI Desktop. So let's talk more on Power BI Desktop. We've understood that Power BI Desktop is an application you install on your local device, and it's where you create your reports, right? So let's look at components now of Power BI Desktop. So you install the local app, right, on your device, on your laptop, and you're trying to create reports. Let's see the different components of the Power BI Desktop. So the first component is we'll look at is Power Query. And what is Power Query? So Power Query is the data transformation and mashup engine within Power BI. So Power Query is another name for Power Query is gets and transform data, right? So Power Query, it helps you connect to different data sources, and then you bring data in and then transform and clean it up. So with Power Query, you can collect, clean, and combine data from multiple sources like Excel, Facebook, websites, and databases. So there are several sources, right, beyond what we have here that you can connect with Power Query. So with Power Query, you connect to data. And as we all know, most times data is unclean, right? It's in the wrong format. It has inconsistencies. So with Power Query, it's very powerful. It could do a lot of simple and complex data transformations with Power Query. And then Power Query has a graphical user interface, right? GUI. So you just click and drag, right? You click, drag, and under the hood, Power Query will carry out all the data manipulations for you. And Power Query is powered by a formula language called M. So we'll see all this, right, in a bit. But Power Query, the formula that drives Power Query is called the M formula. So when you hear M language, right, it refers to Power Query. So this image at the right, this just shows you, the snapshot of what Power Query looks like, right? So you have different tabs that carry out different functions. And we'll see a bit of this in subsequent sections. So in summary, right, Power Query helps you connect to data, right? Data sources. And then it helps you also clean up this data. So that's the main work of Power Query, right? Get and transform data. Get that from the source and then transform and clean it up. That's Power Query. So Power Query can connect to numerous data sources, right? And every month you have updates to Power BI and you have support for additional data sources. So as the days go by, right, you also have more data sources that are being supported by Power Query. So an example, right, are file tabs. So you have Excel, CSV files, XML files, JSON files, folders, PDF, SharePoint, among others. And then you also have databases, right? Myriads of database sources. So you have SQL Server, Access, Oracle, IBM, Postgres, amongst others. And you also have cloud, also like Azure databases, Amazon, etc. So all those different, this Amazon Redshift here. So you have access to several kinds of databases, both cloud-based and local databases. And then you have other sources, right? Like websites, SharePoint lists, OData, Hadoop, R scripts, Python scripts. So you can also run Python R scripts, right, in Power Query. So this is quite not too complicated, right? But then there's something that's interesting to work on, right? So possibly we might have maybe a project that will use Python scripts in Power Query. That would be very interesting to work on. So these are all several sources you can connect with Power Query and bring in data, right, to Power BI. So let's look at the next component of Power BI Desktop, which is Power Pivots or the modeling view. So Power Query helps you bring in data, right? And also transform and clean data up. So once you're done with the data cleaning and transformation, the next step is to create a data model. A data model is simply, maybe you have data from different sources, different tables, etc. You now create a model, right? A model is just trying to create how your tables are being connected together, right? And that helps you to now create accurate and consistent reports. So Power Pivots modeling view. Power Pivots is a data modeling technology, and it lets you create data models and also establish relationships, right, between your different tables, and also create calculations. So most times you might need to create or derive new data points or columns, right? So Power Pivot helps you do all this. And Power Pivot, right, it allows for the creation of star schemas. So the star schema is just a form of data model, right, where you have a central table and then they are connected, right, via one-to-many relationships. You have a central table and then you have dimension tables that are linked to that central fact table. So that's something we'll look at in subsequent sections. But you can create star schemas with Power Pivots and also create measures. So a measure is simply a simple calculation, right? It could be sum this column up, multiply A column by B column, etc. Right? Those are all measures. So you're just trying to create calculations, right? I can also create calculated columns. So a calculated column is simply deriving a new column from an existing column. For example, let's say I have a dates column, right? I can create a new column called months that derives the month from the year column, right? From the dates column, rather. I have a dates column. I can extract the months into a new column. That's a calculated column, right? And then you can also build relationships with tables and entities. So these are all things we'll go through in subsequent sections and they will make more sense. And then with Power Pivot, right? You can also use what's called DAX, right? Which is simply the data analysis expression language. And this is what we use to create measures and calculated columns in Power BI. So if you're familiar with Excel functions, right? DAX is similar to Excel functions, but it's like Excel functions on steroids, right? So it's more powerful and advanced than Excel functions. But then DAX is something you use to create measures and calculated columns in Power BI. And we'll look at this also in subsequent sections. So Power Pivot, right? It helps you to create data models, to create connections between your tables, right? And then it also helps you to create measures and calculated columns. So these a pictorial representation, right, of a data model. So you see different tables, right, and how they are connected together. So this is a simple data model, right, in Power BI. And this is done by the help of Power Pivot. So let's look at the next component of Power BI, which is the Power View, right, or report view. So the next step, right, with Power Query, you bring in your data, right, from the data source, and then you carry out your data cleaning and transformation. Once you're done with that, right, you then make it into Power BI. And then with Power Pivot, you try to create your data model with Power Pivot and maybe create measures and columns. Once you're done with all these, right, the next step is to start creating your visuals. And that's what Power View is used for, right? Power View or Report View. This is where you create your visuals, right? Create your reports. So Power View is the data visualization component of Power BI. And Power View, it lets you create interactive charts, graphs, maps, and other complex visuals, right? That helps you to bring your data to life. And using the columns or measures, right, that you created, right, with DAX, you can use this to create visuals, create reports, right, etc. And this is just showing you some example of visuals, right? You have a ribbon chart, you have a map, a bar chart, a tree map, etc. These are all examples of visuals, right, that you can create using the Power View. So these are the components of Power BI Desktop, right? Power Query helps you clean, bring your data in, and clean and transform it. And then Power Pivot helps you to create data models, create measures, and calculated columns. And then finally, the Power View or Report View is where you create your visuals, right? You build your reports. So why should one use Power BI? Why should you learn Power BI, right? So the first thing, right? So why should you learn Power BI? And also, why do organizations use Power BI? So the first reason, right, is the ease of use. So for Power BI, right, it provides a simple interface, right, where you can just drag and drop, right? Just by dragging and dropping points, right, you've created a visual. So it's very easy to use Power BI, right? It has a simple graphical interface that you can drag and drop and create really, really beautiful and interactive visual. So it has a very, very low barrier of entry, easy to use, right? And then the next reason, right? Power BI is easy to learn. So it's built upon the concepts of Excel, right? So if you know how to use Excel, then it'll be easier for you to build on that knowledge to learn Power BI. And also, you don't need to have any programming experience, right, to use Power BI. Without any programming experience, you can learn Power BI and create reports. However, maybe when you're trying to create more advanced reports or dashboards, right, you might need to write some DAX formulas or Power Query formulas, right? But then that's also similar to what you do in Excel. So you don't need to have programming experience to use Power BI. It's very easy to learn Power BI. And then with Power BI, right, it's easy to collaborate. So we mentioned earlier, right, the Power BI service. So you create a report and you can share the reports across the organization you work in, right, with your colleagues, and you can also collaborate with other developers on your team. So with Power BI, you can easily collaborate with people. You can share reports. You can work on building reports with colleagues together, right? So Power BI offers a very easy platform, right, to collaborate with colleagues and also share your work with colleagues in your organization. And then the next one, right, is cost effective. So Power BI Desktop, right, you can install it for free at no cost. So Power BI Desktop is free to install on your device. So install Power BI at no cost. And when you compare, so for enterprise, for enterprise use, right, for companies, organizations that do business, right, when you compare Power BI with other similar platforms like Tableau, Looker, etc., you find out that Power BI is also cost effective, right? So in most cases, right, Power BI is cheaper compared to those other platforms. So Power BI is it has a very, very cost effective product plan, right, for its customers. And then the next reason, right, it has a wide coverage of data sources and they keep growing every month, right? So you can connect to Excel files, CSV files, databases, websites, SharePoints, etc. So you have several stuff you can connect to with Power BI. And then lastly, right, you have data governance and security. So with Power BI, right, you can also, you are sure that your data is secure. And also you can also manage the people that have access, right, to certain data reports or dashboards, right? So you have things like row level security, for example. You can create a report and limit the people who access parts of that report. So I could say maybe I have a report and I can say, okay, I have East region, North region, West region, and South region, right? And I'll have a row level security that says only those from the East region would see data for the East region, right? Those for North region will see North region's data. So it means that someone in the West region, for example, will not see data for those in the East region, right? So you could do all those kinds of things with Power BI. It offers row-level security and some other security tools, right? So for example, if I make a workspace, I can limit people who can access that workspace, right? So all these are things that you could use to ensure security of data, right, in your organization. So Gartner is a world-renowned institution, right? And they every year they release a Magic Quadrant, right, for BI platforms. So they rank all the BI platforms, right, based on those that are leaders, challengers, etc. So Gartner recognizes Microsoft, right, as Power BI, that's a BI tool, as a leader for the 15th consecutive year in the Gartner 2022 Magic Quadrants for BI platforms, right? So if you look at this image here, right, there's a Magic Quadrant for BI platforms. This 2021, for example. So you have 4 quadrants, right? Challengers, leaders, niche players, and visionaries. So look at the top right, right? The very first, let me annotate, look at this place, right? So this is showing you the leaders, right? And if you look, the very first one is what Microsoft Power BI. So Power BI is a leader, right? When you compare all the BI platforms, you also have Tableau, you also have Click. Then you have other quadrants like challengers. You have challengers, right? And you have Looker and other platforms. Then you have those that are niche players, right? Niche players. And then you also have visionaries, right? So we find out that what Microsoft Power BI, right, is a leader in 2021. Same thing also for 2022. When you do care, right, is a leader also. So for 15 consecutive years, Power BI has remained a leader for BI platforms. So these are things, right, that you consider when you're trying to choose a BI tool to learn or also to implement in your workplace. So Microsoft Power BI is a leader for 15 consecutive years, according to Gartner. So let's look at how to install Power BI Desktop. So there are two ways to install Power BI Desktop, right? The first one is using the, let me share my full screen. So the first one is using the Microsoft Store app, right? Microsoft Store. So simply open up Microsoft Store. So when I come on here, this is my Microsoft Store app, right? I open this up. Microsoft Store, right? And then next thing is you open up the Store app, then you search for Power BI Desktop. So I'll do that now. I come on here and I'll search for Power BI Desktop. So I can see it highlighted. So I click on it, Power BI Desktop. And then the next thing you do is click install, right? Click on the install icon. So I come on here and I already have Power BI installed, right? So it's showing open, right? But if you don't install it prior to opening the store app, you will see the install icon. So you click on that, right? And it will start the installation for you. It will take a few minutes, right? And then it's installed. And that's all. So let's go back to the slide, right? So some benefits of installing Power BI, right, via the Microsoft Store is that. So this is what it looks like, right? This image here, what it looks like. You see the install icon, click on install. So benefits of installing via the Microsoft Store, right? It updates automatically. So once you install via the Microsoft Store, right? Every month, Power BI releases updates to the app, right? So instead of going to their website and installing manually, right? It updates automatically. So when you install via the Microsoft Store, it means that your app is always up to date, right? It does that behind the hood. You don't need to do any additional thing. And then also, right, it ensures smaller downloads. Only the new updates are added, right, every month. You don't need to install the full thing, right? So it ensures smaller downloads. And then also to install via the Microsoft Store app, right, you don't need to have admin privilege on your laptop. And lastly, right, language detection. So it automatically detects the local language, right? And also installs all the supported languages for the app on your laptop. So it's recommended, right, that you install via the Microsoft Store. So I have a question that's asking, do you need internet to use Power BI? So to install Power BI, right, you need to be online for that to happen. But once you're done installing Power BI, to use the app itself, you don't need to be online, right? You can work locally with Power BI Desktop. You don't need internet access. Or else you're trying to publish your reports to the Power BI service. So remember that Power BI service is a cloud-based platform, right? So you need to be online to do that. And then, as we'll see in subsequent sections, right, there are times where you might need to install third-party visuals, right? So in that instance, you also need to be online to do that. So, but then to use the app itself, right, it doesn't require internet access. You could do that without internet and it will work perfectly. So the alternative way, right, to install Power BI, that's you do it directly. So what you do is you go to the download center page, right? So let me just go to my browser. Let's just do it from scratch. So what I can do is I just search on Google. So I say install Power BI. I'll search install Power BI, right? And the very first thing that pops up, right, downloads Power BI. So I click on this. So Power BI tools, etc., right? So Power BI desktop. I can just choose this option, right? Power BI desktop. And I go to the Okay, sorry, this is a store link. I don't want this. I want the direct download. When they again install Power BI desktop. Yeah, this is what I want. So Power BI desktop, right? So there's a download page for download center for Power BI desktop. So once you come here, right, your language, you choose it. So default is English, right? We choose maybe a different language. For English works for me. And then you see details, right? The version, the date published, etc. And you also have the requirements for your system, right? So it's showing you that Windows 10 upwards, sorry, Windows 8 upwards, right? So I think I saw somewhere Windows 7 is not supported. So you have to have at least a Windows 8 version for it to work. And then you also have 32-bit versions, right? Or 64-bit versions. And then install instructions, right? Just click on the one that suits your needs, whether it's 64 bits, right? It's 6 bits. So you come here and click on download, right? Let's see. So you come here and click on download, right? And then you have what's 64 bits, right? Etc. So what I want is 64 bits. You choose this, right? And then hit next. And this should start the download, right? So actually, I already have Power BI. I'll just stop this. But once this is done, right, you just go on and then run the executor file, right, that is downloaded. Once you run it, right, follow the instructions. And once you're done, you should have Power BI installed on your system. So you choose download from the page, you choose your version, right, either it's 64 bits, 32 bits, and then install Power BI after downloading it. So once you're done, right, you then open up Power BI. So let's say you're done installing Power BI, right? You come onto your search bar, or just search for Power BI, right? And this is here, Power BI desktop. So I'll open these up. So let's open up. I think it's coming up. Take a few. Yeah, I think this is. Yeah, it's coming up. So once it's done, you just see it pop up. Yeah, so this Power BI desktop, right, is popping up here. So this is what you have, right? For the first time you open it up, you have something like this. So this used to have a yellow color, but I think this month's update, it changed to this teal or green color. So this Power BI desktop, right? So I could just close this, right? If I close this, and this what the Power BI desktop view looks like, right? So currently these, if I can zoom in. Okay. So currently, right, we are on the report view, right? You can see my icon is the report. We are currently on the report view. So this way you can create reports, right? Make your reports, your charts, etc. And then you also have data view, data view. So this way you see your different tables, right? Your tables, your columns, etc. And then lastly, you have the model view. So this where once you bring in your data, right, you see your tables, how they are connected together, right? The relationship between your tables, you see all that here. So this is the model view. So you can import data, right? So by default, you see several sources, Excel, SQL Server, etc. However, if you want to bring in from other sources, right? So once you come up here, you see this icon, get data, right? So this, when I click on this, you see it opens up some common sources, Excel, Power BI, etc., etc., etc. So for example, if you come on here and choose more, right? And you have a full view of all the different sources. Yeah, cool. So get data, right? So these are all the sources. So I could choose file, for example, and you see the file sources, Excel, text, PDF, etc. You also have databases, right? So this shows you SQL, etc. And when I scroll down, you see several other, so this MariaDB, Jetro, etc. You also have Power Platform, right? Dataset, data mats, etc. You also have Azure. So these are all cloud sources, right? Azure SQL database, blob storage, etc. And then you also have online services, right? SharePoint lists, Dynamics, DevOps servers, Google Analytics, etc. And then you have other sources, right? So this is where you find websites, for example, SharePoint links, Python scripts, R scripts. So you say you have several sources you can connect to, right? So you have data on these platforms. Power BI can support all these platforms and bring in data for you. So for today's section, actually, we won't go into all this, right? So this is just mostly telling you about Power BI, what it does, why you should learn how to use it, and how to install Power BI. So these all I have for today's section, right? The next section, we'll look at Power Query, and we'll look at several ways of using Power Query, right, to clean data. We'll connect to different sources and try to use Power Query, right, to clean and transform data from these different sources. So any questions on what we've talked about so far? So you can type in the chat or simply raise your hands if you have a question. Okay, so it looks like the other question. So it means we all followed along, right? That's great to know. Okay, so Doyen says I was able to install from MS DOS seamlessly. That's perfect. That's great to know. So you could try to do it right. Microsoft Store. I recommend Microsoft Store. But if for some reason it does not work, then you can resort to the second method, right? Go to the download center and install it. And the next section, right, we'll look at how to work with Power Query to connect to data sources and clean and transform data from these sources. So in the absence of no questions, right, thank you all for your time, and I'll catch you guys later. Have a great night rest. Okay, I have a question from Adekunle. I can hear you going. If you're talking, your mic is probably your mic is muted. I can't hear you. Let me see.
Yeah, good evening.
Yeah, go on. I can hear you now. Yeah, good evening,
Sorry,
Adekunle.
I would like to ask if Power BI does the same work as a SQL.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Adekunle. So Power BI and SQL, right? They are different tools for different purposes, right? They can work together, right? But then they're different tools. So most organizations, right? They host their data in databases, and SQL is a language for databases. So you're trying to manipulate data in databases, then SQL is the language you use, right, to manipulate data in databases. So a database is used to store data, right? That's what it does. It stores data for you. And then Power BI, on the other hand, is a BI tool, right? It's a business intelligence tool that helps you to what? So you have data stored in, it can be a database, an Excel file, etc. It's stored in these places. But now you want to make sense of this data. You want to create reports, create dashboards, right, with those data. So Power BI is built for that kind of scenario. With Power BI, I can connect to a data on a database, right? And then use that data to what? Create a report or create dashboards, right? So SQL is used for databases, but then you also have instances where SQL can be used to also create reports, right? There are some BI tools, right, whereby SQL is the language that's used to create reports, like Mode, for example. With Mode, you can use SQL to what? Create custom tables and then visualize those tables in those platforms. But Power BI is different from SQL, right? So I hope that answers your question. Yeah, so okay. So if there are no questions, right, thank you all once again, and have a great night's rest and an awesome week ahead. I'll catch you guys in the next section.